there are unexpected deaths happening all over this country and in the world. And so one of the reasons we do this seminar, I do this seminar, is to prepare people for the inevitable. We will die. We just don't know the timing. And so how do we prepare for that? So one of the things I start out with are end-of-life essentials. What are the essential documents I need? And I start with the Advance Directive. The Advance Directive is a document that you sign with 2 witnesses or a notary that declares who you wish to speak for you when you can no longer speak for yourself. There are 4 parts generally to an Advance Directive. The first is your designation of the agent and alternates, the person that you want to speak for you, a person that is knowledgeable of your needs and wants, and also knows their way around the hospital. In addition to that, there's a second person they will call if they can't reach that person on the document. The second part of the document usually has to do with your wishes at end of life. Do you want CPR? Do you want kidney dialysis? Are there things that you specifically want to have done or not have done? And can you write them down and declare them? The third part is usually about organ donation. And I say organ donation because body donation is a separate form. So if you have already done this on your license, that's wonderful, but very few doctors check your license when you're in the hospital. So having it on the Advance Directive will put it in your permanent chart and they'll know your wishes regarding organ donation or not. A lot of cultures and religions do not allow for organ donation, so it's important they know that. And finally, there is the idea of who will handle the funeral and who will also deal with some of the other specifics. There may be a primary physician who knows your history. And so very often an Advance Directive, the name of the primary physician. So if you're in the emergency room and they need to know your history, they will call your primary physician and find out what's going on. Anyway, that's the Advance Directive, a very important document. In order to make it legal, it requires 2 witness signatures. One can be a family member that is not named as an agent, and the second one has to be someone outside of the family. When all 3 of you are in the same room and you sign in front of them, they then witness your signature, and the second person that's not the family member signs also an affidavit to say they are not a part of your family. That's the Advance Directive, a very powerful document, and it is put in your permanent chart as you submit it to the hospital. You give copies to your agents, and usually you keep the original yourself. The second form that I encourage people to think about is a pink form called the POLST. It's physician-ordered life-sustaining treatment, and that's different from the AD. It doesn't take the place of the AD. It's primarily for emergency matters. So let's say you fall in your home, and the EMTs, the technicians from the emergency, come to your house to find out what's going on. If you have a POLST, it's generally on your refrigerator or in your bathroom in a prominent place, and they will know exactly what emergency measures they can do. It's a pink form, it's very easy to recognize, and most importantly, it has to be signed by your physician. It is not a form you fill out by yourself. Your physician must sign it, and then they retain a copy as well. The third form is HIPAA. This is the new act that has come into play probably in the last 15 years, maybe 20 years, but it's authorization for use of disclosure of health information. And why is this form important? Well, for instance, if you're like me and you had an 18-year-old son who went off to college and there was no HIPAA form, I had no way to know that he was in the emergency room having emergency surgery because that information would not be divulged to me. If there's no HIPAA form, if there's no authorization for them to share that information, they have no legal then tell you what's going on. So a HIPAA form avoids all of that. If you have a child or you have someone over the age of 18, they have that information for themselves and they do not have to disclose it unless there's a HIPAA form in the file. So that makes that a very important form for people, particularly with children going off to college for the first time. Other members of your family that may be in emergency situations and you need to find out the information. If you're not in their file, if you're not in a HIPAA form, you will not have access to that information. Okay, so those are 3 very important documents that I encourage people to consider right at the top. Let's go on to the next slide, please. I think it's coming in. Lisa, do we have, there we go. So what are some of the things I need to know? Well, we need to know how to navigate a hospital. If you're an agent or you're a person helping someone in your family, hospital can be a very scary place. And I can tell you, working there now for 13 years, well, 13 years in different hospitals at Stanford, it is a very confusing place. And there are a lot of signs to help you. But you need to know where you're going, who you're talking to, and who are the people that are in your care. So one of the ways to do that is to demand a goals of care conversation. If you're about to have a surgery or you have some kind of terminal or very serious illness, perhaps a chronic illness, a goals of care conversation with your doctor allows you to set goals for the kind of care you want. In other words, are you willing to go under surgery with certain things where you may not recover? Or are you in a situation where this chronic illness will require you to do certain kinds of protocol or kinds of recovery measures that will cost a great deal? I mean, you need to know what they're planning. And you ask a lot of questions, and you do not sign anything unless you know the cost. For instance, a lot of people that are in cancer treatment are unaware of the fact that if their medical insurance does not cover immunotherapy, it can be upwards of $125,000. So that's one of those questions you have to ask your doctor. What are the things you're going to be doing to me, and what is the cost? And most importantly, will it be covered? We work in the palliative care department. And amazingly enough, there are still many insurance carriers that do not cover palliative care. We've had people come all the way from Bakersfield and say, I'm here for my palliative care, and find out that their insurance doesn't cover it. It's just tragic. So be sure you know your insurance. Don't sign anything unless you know the cost, because typically they are going to shove a clipboard in front of you and say, just sign these things and we'll get to you. You want to know what that says. And then with that, we want to inform our family of our medical wishes. Sometimes families don't agree, but you're the person living in that body, and you're the one that knows yourself the best. And so it's important that we inform our family of our medical wishes. And one of the ways we can do that is through a group called the Conversation Project. And I don't know if you can see this on my screen, but the Conversation Project is a national organization that works with prompts to help families talk about these tough situations. And they have different templates for just regular chronic illnesses. They have templates for children and difficult diseases. They have templates for dementia patients and so on. And it really helps the family come together to the same table and talk about these things. So again, once you know your goals of care, once you know what it's going to cost and the things that you're about to do, it's important to inform your family so they know what you're facing. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So let's talk about a little bit of the end-of-life essentials. One of the things that we talked about before was, again, those documents, and then having your goals of care conversation, understanding what you believe to be true. But the next thing is the financial inventory of assets and liabilities and your legal matters. I'm going to tell you another story of Ollie and Lucille. This is in chapter Your House in Order. Lucille died at 67. She had a tumor in her brain and died after numerous chemo and radiation treatments. She was survived by an assortment of children from her deceased husband's first marriage, her first marriage, and grandchildren from both sides. Lucille's death occurred in the hospital after a protracted and lengthy stay filled with hospitalists, specialists, and a primary doctor. All of these medical personnel were left the best plan of care and determine what should be done because Lucille refused to sign an advance directive. Her children, unaware of her wishes, allowed whatever recommended tests to be carried out on her. Because the tests were doctor endorsed, her family assumed the tests would prolong her life indefinitely. They didn't. At the church for the memorial planning, the family spent most of their time arguing about money and who should be invited to the ceremony. No one had any clue about Lucille's wishes for a send-off or what was to be said or sung. The pastor acted as a ringleader while the family processed their anger and grief and argued over the inheritance. Back at the house, the treasure hunt was underway, with the invited children combing the rooms for clues as to where the estate summary might be found, with dreams of sugar plums and new cars dancing in their heads. Meanwhile, those who were not invited for the excavation considered hiring a lawyer to make sure they got their fair share. But there were no documents to discover, as Lucille had never prepared nor collected them. And what Lucille's survivors also didn't anticipate was the enormous bill that awaited them from the hospital. They forgot to account for that and the final taxes and estate costs while they were mentally adding up their inheritances. 2 years later, with attorney fees mounting, the estate was still not settled due to a lack of a will and of money to pay probate costs. Lucille died intestate without a will in place, and the state had its own formula for redistribution of the remaining monies. The two sides of the family are still not speaking to one another. By the way, that is a true story. The second one is also true. This one's Ollie. In sharp contrast to Lucille, Ollie had known that planning ahead was wise. A career military person, he decided early on what he needed to set in place before his death. And although he was estranged from one of his two daughters, he opted to treat both daughters equally so his wife would not have to argue or settle any costly legal disputes. He had a durable power of attorney for health care and an advanced directive, signed and in place, specifying his wishes and concerns. His trust and will were also up to date, and he had updated all his financial accounts and insurance policies and shared his account numbers for his pension and Social Security. He had made a list of his personal PINs, codes, and passwords, as well as a list of all the other confidential information that he shared only with his wife so she could safely keep it and then easily access the information upon his death. He also had a list of his contacts at the VA and other advisors and resource people in his life. He had pre-planned and not prepaid his burial and his memorial service, the scriptures, songs, and the message he wanted to have read. And he made an inventory of possessions he wanted to pass on to his two daughters and had written a loving letter of memory and thanks to his wife, children, and close family members. Once he had prepared and collected all this crucial information, Ollie had placed it all in a white binder. The information in the binder was tabbed and indexed and ready for review. His wife, children, attorney, advisors, and pastors were each given a copy. And after this was done, Ollie could live the rest of his life in peace. And when he died, it was a joyous, celebratory end. There was no treasure, no arguments, just Thanksgiving. End of story for Ollie and Lucille. And those are real people. And these are real stories about people struggling with end of life, some that planned extremely well and some that had no plan at all, leaving their heirs with, quite frankly, a mess. So the financial inventory is important. It's putting our house in order. It's saying, let's find the things that are essential for our heirs to know about us. So when we die, they know where to find them and how to manage them. So the first thing is an inventory of assets and liabilities. And generally that's what you owe and what you own. Then insurance policies, long-term care, auto, home. We're going to see a list of these in just a second. And then additional income sources, Social Security, pension plans, wages, employment accounts. Let's go on to the next. Okay, and then also with that, there may be retirement plans and IRAs and Roth IRAs. There may be individual stocks and bonds. And this is an important part of this financial inventory, after death arrangements. A lot of people pre-plan or even prepay their burial arrangements because they have a plot or a family plot. They may have already prepaid for the Neptune Society or things like that. Make sure your heirs know that. Otherwise, they're hunting around for some place to take the body, and you've already done all that work. And there may be some outstanding debts. Gambling, debts, cards, who knows what it is. But you need to let them know that because those are debts that need to be settled. And there'll be mortgages and credit and tax documents. Some people would say, how many tax documents, how many years? Typically, the statute of limitations is 4 years, but I recommend people save 7 years of tax documents, particularly if they're in business, because sometimes there are, crazy situations where a person will come back and try to, lean against the estate, and you need those tax documents to show the documentation of how that business has been conducted. Other information that would be helpful is military service. If you are part of the military, thank you for your service, obviously, but also you have the privilege of being buried in a military cemetery, and that's free of charge. What the family needs to do is prepare the casket or the cremains of the person and then take it to the military cemetery that has room. Now, I will say that because Many of these places have no room. If you're in San Bruno, there's not been room there for years. But there are places in Los Banos and down in Monterey County where people can still have a military service. And so you want to plan that well in advance and have the document DD-214, which then declares that they were officially a part of the military and they can be buried in that cemetery. Then there's personal wishes and gifts. And I think this is probably one of the most contentious parts, but also some of the best blessings come out of this. Some people like to make a list of personal wishes. I wish for this person this or so. But there's also a gift page. And usually it's furniture or special mementos or things that they care very deeply about. I'm going to talk about my grandmother just briefly. She decided that when she died, she didn't want to have anything that she had to deal with or have any of the family argue over it. So what she did is she made a list of everything that she had, furniture and goodies and jewelry and all sorts of things. And she passed it around to the family and she said, grandkids, kids, pick the top 3 things you want and I will make sure that you get them. So the idea is when everyone had made their choices, and by God's grace there was no duplicates, she loaded everything up in a van and had someone drive it around the country, dropping off the things to the family members. It was the most incredible, loving gift she could do. And when she died, she had a chair and she had a bed. She was in assisted living. She didn't want the arguments. She didn't want people arguing over a couch and costing legal fees. She just wanted everyone to be happy while she was alive, and she could see their happiness and know that they received something that meant something to them. So that's something to think about. We call it Santa Claus on 4 wheels, but she was a very wise woman, and she didn't have to, go through probate or estate issues because there was a chair and there was a bed. That was it, and that got donated to probably a charitable organization. The other thing that is very important is pets are family. It used to be the pets were just dogs and cats, but now they're really family. And so there are special provisions for pets and the care for the pets. Trusts can be made up for them. There are trust provisions in most of the trusts made in the state of California. There are special papers that are put together in a trust to take care of the pets, to know the feeding and the veterinarians and all the other things. That's put into the trust as well. So again, given the way that we are now caring for our pets, is a lot different from the old days. There are special provisions legally for them. Let's go on to the next slide. There we go. So this is actually something out of the book, and you can see this is a much more detailed list. But there's assets, liabilities, insurance policies, additional income sources. And these are important because a lot of people don't know about employment accounts that may have been a former job or some kind of pension plan, retirement plans, IRAs, Roth IRAs, the after-death arrangements we've already talked about, the debts and the tax documents. All of those are generally a bit of a search. So I encourage people to get those papers now. Throw them out on the floor, sort them out, get them in pieces, put them in that binder, and let people know what it is you have. Especially if it's like a more sophisticated defined benefit plan, that's usually an old pension plan from the old days, that may be still generating income, and you want your kids to know about that. There may be provisions for a beneficiary that when that person dies, another person gets half of that account or a portion of it. So all of those things need to be detailed. Then the legal and the estate information, the will, the trust documents, and we've already talked about this durable power of attorney and so on. This is all it's in the 4th chapter, so it's very easy to pull out and just have this available for you. Let's go on to the next page. And then we've talked about military, personal wishes, and so on. I think probably the two most important things on this page, of course, are original documents. If you have a deed of trust, if you have a decree, a divorce decree, or marriage license, or a birth certificate, we want to keep those original documents in a safe box. Some people prefer a bank. Others would prefer a fire-safe box at home. I tend to go with the latter rather than the former, but it's really up to you in terms of accessibility. Sometimes banks are very tough, kind of a Fort Knox after a death. You have to have a death certificate in order to get in and so on. And so having it at home sometimes makes it a little easier for your family. Then the user IDs, passwords, we can't we can't emphasize this enough. How many times have we heard where people forgot to do the PINs and the passwords, and the family is still scrambling trying to get bank accounts open 6 months later? So we want to keep that information in a separate place, and generally it goes to the executor, the person that's handling your estate. Okay, let's go on to the next page. Also, some people want to do giving, philanthropic work. And so Ron Blue says, do your giving while you're living so you're knowing where it's going. I mean, the idea of trust does that because it designates specific monies to set aside for charitable giving, but it also designates specific accounts and where they will go. So typically, a trust is a wonderful document to do that, a living trust, but you may only have a will because your assets are more modest. And so you can decide with your lawyer what would be the best piece. And then the second thing, there are no U-Hauls following the hearse. I say that because a lot of people think, you know, boy, if I save up all this stuff, if I got 57 boxes of memorabilia, you know, everybody will figure it out. I doubt it. You know, the idea is do the giving now, make the designation, let people know what your intentions are. And particularly for charitable reasons, that's always very handy. Okay, let's go on to the next one. We've already talked about this. This was in your inventory list, so we don't really have to go over this again, but it's part of the slide deck, so I just want to make that kind of another review. And one of the things that's included here is a special needs trust. You may have someone in your family, as I do, who has Down syndrome or who has special needs, and there are trusts specifically for these people, so that if someone dies and they are the conservator or the parent, then this trust will take over and make sure that they have provision for the rest of their lives. So do keep that in mind if you have someone who has special needs in your family. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So what are some of the things we can do in advance? Well, I tell people, tell your story. You know, one of the things that dies with you is your story. I mean, if you don't tell it, who's going to tell it? All the details, the things that happened Lake Winnipesaukee in the year 1936 or whatever, you have a story to tell, and your children want to hear it. And it may be hard things to tell, but do tell it. One of the greatest gifts that happened to me in recent years was my son gave me a subscription to a group called Storyworth. And what Storyworth does is every week they send you a prompt on a topic. So for instance, the topic for 1 week was, what is one of your favorite children's stories? And that gives you an opportunity to not only tell about the story, but maybe something about your childhood. Or where did you go to vacations as a child? Great story there. Or are you still friends with any of your friends from high school, and how have they changed since then? These are things that to your kids would probably be very fascinating. Or how did you become so close to your siblings or not close to your siblings? You tell your story, you put it in. At the end of the year, they produce this little book called, you know, Stories of Family or whatever they're going to title it. And it's a permanent record of your history. That is a wonderful gift. And particularly for people that are working on your memorial, they want to know those stories. They want to know what it was like growing up. The other thing we can do in advance is make funeral and burial arrangements. I talked about this briefly again, but the idea is that most people are clueless as to what they want to do if they're family members and they don't know you. They're saying, well, obviously she wanted to be cremated. Well, maybe she didn't. Or maybe he really wanted to be an eco burial and he wanted to become compost and, you know, be scattered over a forest. Whatever it is you want, put that in writing and make those arrangements in advance. You don't have to pay for them. You're just saying, these are the kinds of things I want. And that saves the family often weeks of planning. Then you can write your memorial plan out. You know, you can say what songs and the things you want to have said, poems, things that matter to you, stories. It's very helpful because as a pastor, someone that has done literally over 400 of these, I can tell you most people don't have a clue. Their kids are just clueless. And if you write it out, if you tell them what you want, that will save everybody a lot of time. And you decide whether you want a graveside or scattering or solemn interment. That's also very helpful. Some people just say, I just want the family. I don't want a big, you know, monster funeral. I just want a few people and to say nice things and then put me in the ground. That's it. So these are things that we can do in advance and help our family, give them an idea of what you are. Let's go on to the next one. Okay. So let's talk about family dynamics. And I say this because I work in a hospital and I see, and actually all three of these characters were in my queue yesterday. In some families, we have a point person, and they're designated to tell the story and act as a broker of information. It might be the eldest son, it might be the eldest daughter, there might be a committee of 20 waiting out in the waiting wing, but just one person goes in, gets the news, and they then tell the family what's going on. And that's pretty typical of a lot of families, especially now in the time of COVID, because there's very few people that can come and visit. So if you have someone in your family like that, that's a responsible party that understands hospital language, can talk with a doctor, knows their way around a hospital, a point person can be very helpful. But then there's the family that decides they're not going to tell the patient anything, assuming they will know they will grow sicker. In other words, it's kind of a self-fulfilled prophecy, and this is often culturally driven by dishonor or shame. But sometimes it doesn't help the family. I mean, they're in the dark because this one person's kind of managing everything. The patient's in the dark because they don't know why they're sick. And it tends to make it very difficult. So you may want to negotiate that with whoever is kind of running the show and say it's not a matter of dishonor or shame, it's a matter of honesty and letting the patient know what's really going on, because they probably do want to know, but we're trying to shield them, or they assume that to be sick is dishonorable, when really, it's just their body's breaking down and it's okay. So something to consider. And then there's the family that wants everything. And I had this yesterday. They want everything and they want it now, and they don't care what the patient feels. And this is in many ways tragic because the patient's the one that's living in the body that's sick, and the family wants everything done. Do this, do this, do this, and do this. And the patient is not well, and they know they're going to die. And so this is kind of a power and control at work. So it's something to consider if you have a family member like this and they want everything, and the patient has said, no, I really don't. I just simply want to die naturally, and I don't need these things. You have to negotiate that. So anyway, these are some of the things that we see in hospitals, and you'll find that the family that allows the patient to speak for themselves and allows the patient to have their wishes generally does the best work. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so the idea is to be courageous. If you're the patient, you notice your life, it's your decision, and you're the only person living in your body. So you have the opportunity to designate a point person and get that word to you. And then if it goes in a wider circle to 20 people or 30 people, we have sometimes, family meetings with 25 people in the room, and that's hard because everybody's got an opinion. But, again, if you're the person living in your body, you're the one that needs to be courageous enough to say, I need one person to tell me what's going on and to make sure that they negotiate with the doctor. And then they can disseminate that to the family. I find that just very helpful. And again, what leads that are the legal documents, the AD and the goals of care notes. If you've made your needs known, it's all there down on paper, and that's what the doctor is following. It's often the family that makes it harder for the patient. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so let's say a person passes away and they have designated an executor or a personal representative. There is a very long list of things they have to do. So before you die, in your will or trust, you generally designate this person. They will need to do pretty much three things. They need to be knowing you, they need to know your wishes, and they need to know the kinds of things you care about. The second thing is they need to know numbers. They need to be a pretty good mathematician or financial person, because there's going to be a lot of figures and numbers to deal with. Taxes, estate matters, financial accounts, and so on. And the third thing is they need to be organized and take the rein, because very often a family is very anxious to get money earlier than they should. And I tell families wait 12 months to 18 months before any distribution. A couple of reasons. First of all, the accounts are not necessarily accounted for on the date of death. They can also wait 6 months. And you may find that it's more advantageous to wait the 6 months than to take the date of death. That's the first reason. Second reason, it takes time to sort out accounts. It requires death certificates. It requires all sorts of legal information and forms to finish up an estate. So you need someone that's really responsible and has a good sense of negotiation and mediation. So here's the checklist, and we're just going to go down a few things so you can see what kind of things they have to do. They notify the appropriate facility of the death. In other words, if someone dies at home and they're on hospice, they notify the hospice, or they notify a funeral home if they are in a hospital, and so on. They notify the clergy or the officiant or the leader of the decedent's faith community, generally because there'll be a service or some kind of commemoration. Can we go down the page a little bit? There we go. And here we go. Just lots and lots of things. We're looking for minors or elderly persons that may need to be cared for since this person is gone. You check for verification of death and arrange to receive an adequate number of death certificates at number 6. Most people would say 10. Some say as many as 20. But keep in mind, every one of those accounts will probably require an original. So that, usually get more than you think you need. We also are, of course, notifying family members. We locate the original will of the trust. We let any of the trustees named in the will if there are others besides that person, and on it goes. We also want to notify all of the personal accountants and people that are running, financial matters in that family. We look into things like Social Security and benefits payable upon death, Social Security insurance, credit unions, military. There may be some insurance that is specifically for funeral expenses. And again, this person needs to know where everything is. If it's in the flash drive or wherever, the inventory, they will know where it is. But sometimes we have to remind them of that. Let's go on to the next page. You can see it's a long list. So, until utility services, turning off the house, taking care of the real estate, oversee and preserve the decedent's assets. So this person has to be really responsible. This is not the youngest kid that's, out doing, running to Bali and, doing globetrotting. This is someone that's going to be there and is going to be pretty set in this task for at least a year to maybe 18 months. And you can see it just goes on. And then collect payment for all debts. If necessary, decide which assets will be sold to pay the expenses, et cetera, and so on. So it's a long list. It takes a very, very, organized and very well-heeled person to do this. I don't know if there's another page, Lisa. Let's just go one more. There is indeed. Okay, so it goes to 30 points that we've put here, and then prepare the final estate accounting. In other words, until you get to 30, no one should get any money. Okay, there are all sorts of people that say, but I know there's a lot of money there, and I really want all this. It's not fair, because if it's being evenly distributed and that person gets it, who knows what's going to happen to those estate accounts between the time that person gets paid and then the payout happens. So we tend to say, wait your turn, wait until everything's settled, the estate is settled, the accounting's done, the IRS is happy, then we'll start splitting up the accounts. And I put a word of warning here to the folks whose job it is to make order out of the chaos. People are generally at their worst and best at a funeral or time of death. I can't say that enough. The people you think were just reasonable suddenly go off the deep end, and those that were a little bit not so squared away, they become silent and non-responsive. You're just going to get all sorts of responses. So whoever this representative is, you got to be ironclad in your emotions, very, very astute in how you handle numbers. So anyway, find the right person. This person is really key in terms of end of life. All right, let's go on to the next page. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the hospital. We talked about kind of planning up to the point of death and what happens, and now we're going to talk about the hospital stay. Let's go on to the next page. One of the things that we found out in the age of COVID is that it is very complicated to visit people in a hospital. There's masks, there's the whole inventory of your COVID shots and boosters. There is the limit of 1 to 2 people in the room, maybe. And at death, maybe only 3. So there's just all sorts of changes to what used to be a big happy family around a bed is now maybe 1, maybe 2 people. And they're having to come up with ways to make it a cheerful time for this person who may be actively dying. So one of the things I tell people is that there's a group called Caring Bridge. And to keep everybody informed, you can write one information piece a day, and then all of them can respond on that website. And that response can then be taken to the patient, and they can read out their responses and know that they've been thought of. And so Caring Bridge becomes a very helpful tool if you haven't already used it. It's on, you can just Google the word Caring Bridge. Also, we encourage a positive environment. You know, so often there is so little in terms of a room that is cheerful. You know, you see all this equipment, you see all this medical stuff, you see syringes around and, you know, papers and so on and so forth. Sometimes people bring in pictures, sometimes they bring in, you know, little mementos and they hang them on the wall, and that just gives that patient a little bit more to look at rather than linoleum tile. We also encourage music and playlists. If they have, most hospitals now have iPads, and you can send a music or a playlist to them, their favorite music. If they like the 60s or 70s or they want disco or whatever, they can play that during the day, and you can, you know, add a running narrative if you want. There's also therapy dogs. Some of you may be aware of that. There's a group at Stanford called PAWS, and they are very specially trained dogs. They can only go in certain units. Not everyone gets to see them. But it's such an amazing moment of peace and solace when someone can pet a dog, and that dog is there just to be with them. Visits in person, as I said, are great, but they're very restricted right now. So you may want to decide as a family who can go what day and what hours. One of the things that's very popular, of course, are Zoom visits. I have actually conducted a Zoom visit with actually 35 people on the same call, and it's been pretty amazing. But, you know, they got everything said, they prayed, they sang, they listened to, you know, music and all the things. There's Marco Polo, where you can, you know, send a short video of yourself via Marco Polo. Trying to think, let's see, what else? Creative ideas, meals and recipes. Sometimes people have, if they're able to eat, not everyone can, but if they're able to eat, you might send a meal or a recipe via a visitor that they remember and love, or a special treat. There's also tributes. People can write notes. They can have that Zoom call and offer, you know, what they remember about this person and how much they love them and the things that matter to them. There's readings and prayers. Just so many ways we can contribute to their joy and in such a difficult place called a hospital. And then there's what I call the last sprint. When a person is near death, it's very, very common, more common than I can tell you. When a person decides somehow they have just enough energy, they want to party. You know, they come to this point, maybe it's a week before they die, but all of a sudden they get this last sprint and they want everyone to come. So that's when you say yes. You bring in, you know, some apple cider, you do whatever it is they want to do if they party. I had one person who had their last sprint and literally 12 hours later died. It was their way of saying goodbye. They wanted to have one last hurrah. And so we'll see this in a lot of patients where they just somehow garnish up enough energy to do this last sprint. And so people need to be there. They need to get on the Zoom call or be in the room or whatever. Then we get to the finish line, as we call it, where the body is starting to really decompose and they're unable to speak. And so we do what we always do, is present our presence, be there for them, hold their hand if necessary, wipe their brow, sing to them, things that can only be done in one direction because they're not able to speak. Then usually when a person dies, there is a pause. The medical staff will come in and they will have a pause and honor that person and give tribute to them and let them know how much they meant to them. And that's very, very honoring to the family if the family is present, and recognition of the helpers and all the people that were part of their care. And then I always encourage people to take time before you leave. It's very easy to say, oh my gosh, it's a dead body and I want to go. But take the time to just be in the presence. And you may be a person of faith and want to pray a prayer of dedication. You may be a person that wants to chant. In some religions, you know, everything is turned off. There's silence in the room. They sit in vigil. There's lots of things you can do. And most hospitals will honor that. You don't have to just leave right away. So keep that in mind to give yourself a little time for that pause. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, what happens when a body dies? Well, normally they take a last breath. That's why it's called expiration. You know, we take a breath in when we are born and we leave that last breath when we die. And a doctor will usually come in, doctor or physician assistant now, they actually, or excuse me, yeah, yes, can come in and actually declare. They will usually check for vital signs and so on, and then they will make a declaration of a time. The family is informed if they're not in the room, and the body is prepared for the cold room or morgue, unless the coroner is involved. And then the decision regarding an autopsy or organ donation is usually made at that time. If it's a coroner's case, it means that the county or the medical examiner will take jurisdiction over the body, and that's a rare thing in a hospital, generally about 10% of the patients. But if someone's come through an ED and it's been a violent death or an unknown disease, then the coroner will take jurisdiction and an autopsy will be performed. Let's say, though, they're not a coroner's case and they have not been transferred to the county offices. They remain in the cold room of the hospital until the funeral or home or cremation comes for pickup. So that means that within the first 2 or 3 days, the family makes a decision on where this body will go. Maybe it's a crematorium, maybe it's a funeral home, whatever. And then if it's coroner's case, as I mentioned, they'll move to the county offices and they do their own death certificate. Because if it's moved to a funeral home, they do the death certificate there. If it's a coroner's case, they do it at the county. Then usually after the family's been informed and so on, there's a wake, a memorial, an interment or interment. And then it's important to note that no one can bury a body in the state of California without a death certificate. So if it is a 24-hour burial, we usually have to do a very fast, extremely fast, communication and with the county to try to get that done. So if you are of a certain faith where you hope to get a 24-hour burial, it may not be possible, especially in the time of COVID. There was a time during this disease when it was actually a 6-week wait. So we had to ask a lot of imams and a lot of Buddhist priests and a lot of other people, Hindu priests, to be gracious to us because we simply couldn't get those death certificates done. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So with that, in the book, I have a huge section on religious and cultural practices, pre-death, post-death, and funeral rites for Judaism, Catholicism, Protestantism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. I simply do this because a lot of generations of people are not attending temples and churches and places, and their parents die and they don't know how to conduct that funeral or cultural practice. So there is a whole section in the book for that, and that will help you do the pre-death and post-death. Finally, I think we'll go to the last slide because we're really getting close to our time. Some thoughts on grief and loss. One of the things that happens with the passing of someone dies, is we feel a certain grief or loss in our own heart. And I want to just stress right away, there's no timeline. Grief is not linear. It doesn't run, this and this and this, and then you get to this. It can absolutely be a roller coaster and back and forth. So please consider the fact that you are on your own timeline, that people are not to push you and to tell you when you're done. And it may be that you'll have, as many people think, you'll have denial, and then you'll have the anger, and then you'll have the depression and so on. It doesn't always happen that way. It's not linear. There can be all sorts of emotional feelings that you have, and they're all okay because it's you and it's your personal way of grief. I also encourage people to know who your friends are. Call them. Try not to isolate yourself. If you're feeling as though you need to talk to someone, it's okay to call them. Your friends are the people that love you despite your issues, not because you are wonderful. They love you despite whatever you're going through. And you would do the same for them. So it's important that we keep those friends close. And there's no right way to grieve. If people say, oh, well, it's been 6 months. Come on, go on. It's la, la, la. Well, that's not fair. And it's not fair to say, well, there'll always be another person, or, God needed them in their garden, or whatever horrible things that you hear. There's no right way to grieve. You need to do the things you know best in your personal way. And it may be that your family has certain traditions and you want to follow those, or there may be traditions you don't want to follow. So the idea is make this a personal journey. And honesty is the best policy. Write a grief letter. Tell whomever you feel you want to express how you feel. You may not ever send it, but you want to let people know how you feel. And that's okay to write that letter. And if you send it to someone, call them, let them know it's coming. And if you don't, you've written your feelings on paper. I also encourage people to delegate. You know, it's not something where you have to hold on to everything. It's important that you call in your friends if you need someone to help clean up your house or clean up this, or to sort clothes of your loved one, or to get rid of some of the things in the house that you don't want, and so on. And then counseling is essential. You're going through a tough time. Don't assume that you can do this alone. Counseling is a very important thing. If you have, you know, in your medical plan, there's usually someone available through a panel of counselors that you can call on, or you may call someone like Cara, which is a free service, or in Palo Alto. They do wonderful work. They work with a volunteer staff, and they also have other counselors that you can call upon. And to know that kids grieve too. You know, we assume that it's just us that grieves, but kids feel the heat as well. And you'll see them do crazy things like make their bed every day when they never had made their bed, or be the perfect child because they assume that when they do that, that person will come back. So understand your kids are grieving too. Give them the time and the space to talk about how they're feeling. And then be good to yourself, be kind to your body. I can't encourage this enough. Often if you're a caregiver and you've been working with this person and all of a sudden they die, then there's this very large gap in life, both in terms of time and also the fact that maybe you haven't cared for yourself. So it's good to get that physical exam. It's good to check in how you're doing because you've taken so much time of yours and given it to somebody else. And then I encourage people to rekindle the spiritual life, because sometimes with the void and with the idea of grief, you find that there's a void there, that you need something beyond yourself. And the spirituality may come in the form of a deity, it may come in the form of nature, it may come in the form of things or things that inspire you, but it's encouraging to rekindle your spiritual life. Okay, I think that's the end of the talk. Let's see, yep, there we go. So that's my information, that's my website and the name of the book. I'd be honored to answer any questions. I know we've just got a few minutes left, but we'll certainly fill them in. And I think, Lisa, if you got the list, you can let me know what you want me to answer.
Yes, there's one question from Kathy. She wants to know what regulations there are for tree burial.
Sure. It has to do with the county. So in the book, there's a whole thing on eco burials that you may be interested in doing. Let me just make sure I got the page on it. Let's see, in 97 to 101 in the book, there's a whole piece on eco burials and the permission that's given. But basically, it has to do with the county. If you're working with, say, a park, or you're working with, scattering ashes over a certain place, you want to, contact the county and find out what the permission is required. Sometimes it's an application, sometimes they don't care. I mean, a lot of people just don't even think about it. They just go out in a boat and that's it. They scatter the ashes over the thing. But it's important that you at least check in with the county and see what their regulations are.
Is a permit required?
Normally, yeah. Okay. And again, it's going to go from county to county. And there's just all sorts of, again, in this particular section, 97 to 101, I think it is, yeah. There's just all sorts of stuff about things like Recompose, a company that specializes in a process that gently converts human remains into soil. So that's a nice thing.
I've heard about body composting.
Absolutely, and that's the whole point. So the process begins with a natural organic reduction powered by beneficial microbes which occur naturally on the body and so on. So basically you just become part of the earth. And I think in a way, given our ecology and the way people are trying to use up less land, that can be a loving act. So, yeah.
Can ashes be scattered in national parks?
Again, it would take a permit.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to honor where you're going. So if it's a county park, if it's a national park, wherever it is, you'd want to approach them personally. Some people may never do that, and they're encroaching on land or property, and they could get in trouble. So it's just good to get permission. if you can.
Okay. And what was the name of the organization? You mentioned Palo Alto. Was it CARA?
CARA, K-A-R-A. And CARA is an organization that does free or, I guess, scaled up costs for counseling. They have both volunteer counselors and regular counselors that, have actual degrees. Some people like that because they can be in a group and it's led by a facilitator. Other people want one-on-one. But I encourage people to find someone to just be able to have a safe place to share and let that be part of their emotional health. Where and how to get all the documents to prepare from your list? Well, they're all in the book. So that's a good place to start. And also, I believe, Lisa, you're going to give them the slides. Is that correct?
Yes, I did email everybody who signed up for this program a handout of all the slides. I'm also going to share a page from the library of the books that are available.
Great.
Let me get that up here. Okay, so here is. Do you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So here is Elizabeth's book, The Last Things We Talk About. But there are also many other books in the library that you can research on the topic of planning toward the end of life transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the organization is really key. I have a couple of little things I was going to share. There's a group called Peaceful Presence that does end notes, and that's an inventory, so you can kind of do some of the things that we've walked through today. And then another piece called Final Wishes, which is just pages and pages of inventory. But what I found is a lot of people, when they do their trust, if it's a good lawyer, and I think most of them are nowadays, they actually add pages, for burial planning and for certain financial and accounts and so on. So you might want to check with your lawyer and see if they have pages, but everything's in the book if you need any of those lists. So in the book, it's got the HIPAA, it doesn't have advanced directives because I'm encouraging people to get those from the hospital where you go or the clinic where you go. And that way they're familiar with that form and you're not trying to give them something they don't know. But the checklist, the body disposition, ceremony program preferences, eulogy and obituary planning, religious and cultural considerations, they're all in the back. So you can make copies of these. Also, I should say, Lisa, if you go to the website for the Bull Publishing, which is who publishes it, they actually have all those templates available on the website as well. So,
okay. Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's another way to do it, and they're a full page rather than a partial page like this. So.
Okay, and I will send out the links that for all the organizations that you mentioned,
Right.
and that I put into the chat to everybody who signed up for this program.
Thank you, Kathy. What do you think about the workbook, I'm Dead, Now What? I have it. It's a great workbook. It's really good. It's a good inventory, and it really gets into the weeds. I mean, that's the most detailed of all the inventories I've seen. So it's a good one.
Which one?
I'm Dead, Now What?
Okay.
It's like, again, these are all inventory pieces, end notes, final wishes, I'm dead, now what? The idea is just to get everything written down. It's a manual, so your kids are going to, see all the details you put in. Or should I go to a lawyer to do the living trust first? Up to you. I think a living trust, depending on your income and depending on your estate, is a very helpful document. It hopefully will avoid probate. Some people don't always get to avoid probate, but that's the whole idea, is that you're not going to be taxed based on a state formula. You're going to be able to do your designations now on where those assets will go. So a living trust is a very helpful document based on, how much of your estate. Keep in mind that a trust does not necessarily cover your pensions, because your pensions already have beneficiaries. Trust covers all the other things like real estate, like accounts, joint accounts, things that are cash, things that are stocks, bonds, etc.
Yeah, Mina was asking also if she should create a POA and will either before or at the same time.
Of the trust, they do it automatically. Usually in the trust, you have a pour over will and you have a POA as part of the trust. I mean, again, I'm assuming you've got a great lawyer, but as part of the trust, they generally put all of those things together for you. So you might want to, in fact, when we just finished another one recently, and they gave us an inventory of exactly what they were going to do. And so I knew in advance all the documents I was going to be signing. And that's very helpful.
And in terms of assets to keep out of the trust, does that include IRAs and Roth IRAs?
Normally, yeah. I mean, IRAs, again, have designated beneficiaries so that they don't need a trust document. You can certainly list them, as a separate page in your binder to let people know they exist. But typically, they don't go into a trust because the beneficiary is enough. But you again want to look at your beneficiaries, make sure, usually what people say, it's a beneficiary, and then anything left over or residuals go to the trust. So it's like a double beneficiary. So you want to make sure that's covered with your lawyer.
Thank you very much for staying a little bit longer,
Sure.
Dr. Boatwright. And thank you all for signing up and coming and joining us at this morning's program.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.